At my mom's 60th, she raised a glass and said, "Starting today, your $5,500 paycheck and all future bonuses go to the family fund, or you're out." I just whispered, "You're not serious." But my brother nodded beside her. I stood up and left without another word. A few hours later, they called in a panic. "You're not serious," I whispered, gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. But she didn't even blink. My mother, resplendent in a gold dress she'd definitely made me pay for 6 months ago as an early birthday treat, stood at the head of the long table surrounded by a dozen relatives, raising her glass like she was toasting a promotion. Beside her, my older brother Julian nodded, not a hint of shame on his smug face. "I mean it," she said, smiling like this was some grand occasion. "Today marks a new chapter. The family fund is the future. And Michael, you'll be the foundation of it." The entire room laughed like she'd made a witty toast. Like I was in on it. Like this wasn't a financial hostage situation in the middle of a birthday dinner. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped against the tile floor like a screen. "You're joking?" I repeated, glancing around. My cousin just looked away, and Carla suddenly became very interested in her wine glass. "No," Mom said simply, then added with a little shrug, "It's only fair. You've been doing well, and this is what families do. We help each other." Except help had always been a one-way street in this family. Me giving, them taking. Julian folded his arms and said, "We're trying to build something bigger than just individual success. You owe it to the family." I didn't reply. I just picked up my coat from the back of the chair, turned, and walked out. The sound of my mother's voice calling my name followed me down the hallway, but I didn't stop. I walked straight to my car, started the engine, and drove. No destination. Just away. A few hours later, as I sat in the dark on the edge of my bed, my phone started ringing. First Julian, then Mom, then again, and again, until finally the text started. "Call us back. It's an emergency. You can't just leave like that. Michael, we need to talk. Something's happened." I didn't answer the phone that night. Not when Mom texted 5 times in a row with fake concern. Not when Julian left a voicemail that started with, "Mike, calm down," and ended with a curt, "You're being immature." Because this wasn't new. This wasn't some spontaneous outburst at a birthday dinner. This was the culmination of years of quiet exploitation dressed up as love. Let me take you back. I'm 32, a systems engineer working for a high-performance cloud architecture firm in Seattle. Base salary, $5,500 a month after taxes. Bonuses? Substantial. I'm good at what I do. Not flashy, but consistent. I've been paying rent on a small studio in Belltown, living below my means. I budget. I save. I don't party. I don't blow money. Because for the past 8 years, I've been bailing out my family. At first, it was small. "Michael, honey, your brother just needs a little help covering rent this month. He's in between jobs." That was when Julian quit his third startup job because corporate structure stifled his creativity. "Michael, sweetie, can you float us the down payment for the new family car? We'll pay you back after the tax return." Spoiler, they didn't. That was 5 years ago. They still drive that car. Still call it ours. Like I've ever even sat in it. Then it escalated. When Dad passed suddenly, aneurysm, no warning, I stepped in. Because someone had to. I was 25, still paying student loans, and suddenly I was covering mortgage payments on a house I didn't live in. "Julian? He's grieving," Mom said. He grieved all the way to Cancun with his girlfriend 2 weeks after the funeral. So I paid. Quietly. Steadily. Because I thought that's what good sons do. Because every time I tried to pull back, Mom would say things like, "Your father would be so proud of you." Or, "You know your brother isn't as lucky as you. He needs more support." Support. That word. It started to mean, sacrifice your peace so we don't have to change. Julian burned through 3 failed businesses and never once held a full-time job for more than a year. He called himself a serial entrepreneur, but he was just a serial spender. Fancy suits, new tech, networking events in Napa Valley, all paid for by me, even if no one said it aloud. One time, he literally sent me a Venmo request labeled Family Legacy Expansion. It was for $1,200. I declined it. He texted, "Wow, way to be a team player." My mother called 5 minutes later. "Michael, what's going on with you? Julian's trying to build something, and you're being spiteful." That was the moment I realized something ugly. I wasn't the son in this family. I was the donor. The bank. The one they could guilt into covering everyone else's irresponsibility. So when the birthday dinner happened, it wasn't a surprise. It was just the first time they'd said it so publicly. The family fund wasn't new. It had always existed. It just used to be unspoken. My paycheck, their needs. My bonuses, their lifestyle. My boundaries, negotiable. But now? Now they were institutionalizing it. Formalizing my servitude like I was an employee. And what made it worse, so much worse, was that they expected me to smile about it, to raise my glass and toast to it, to thank them for giving me the honor of funding their lives. That's why I left without saying another word. The next morning, I got a message from my cousin, Jess. Quiet type, usually stays out of family drama. Just checking in. Heard you left the party early. Everything okay? I responded with a single sentence. They tried to claim my income like it was inheritance. She called immediately. Apparently, after I walked out, chaos broke out. Julian was trying to salvage the moment by giving a speech about family solidarity. Mom was crying. Uncle Ray made some passive-aggressive comment about the younger generation being selfish. Then, in front of everyone, Julian announced that I'd agreed to set up a recurring transfer to the family fund, starting that week. And then, silence. Because I hadn't. I hadn't agreed to anything. Just said the mood turned icy when I didn't come back. No one knew what to do. They waited. They called. They panicked. And then, apparently, Julian logged into the shared family Google Drive and started editing a spreadsheet labeled Michael's Contributions 2024 Projected. Like my money was a budget line. Like I was a resource. 3 days later, I received an envelope. Inside was a typed letter from my mother. Not an email. Not a call. A letter. It started with, "Dear Michael, we're worried about you." It went on to say that I'd embarrassed her at her birthday party, that my behavior was hurtful and disruptive, and that if I wanted to continue being part of this family, I needed to learn to share my success. She used phrases like emotional maturity and financial empathy. She said, "You have always been the steady one. That means you have more responsibility." And the kicker? We expect the first contribution to be deposited by Friday. Julian will send the routing info. No apology. No acknowledgement of how wrong this was. Just expectation. Entitlement. Like I was an employee failing to meet a quota. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it into the trash. And then I did something I should have done years ago. I made a plan. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was clarity. Like I'd been gaslit for so long that walking away felt like betrayal. But now? Now it felt like oxygen. And I wasn't going to just disappear. They wanted a family fund? Fine. I'd give them something they'd never forget. The next morning, I called my HR department and rerouted my paycheck to a new account at a different bank. One my family didn't even know existed. I closed the old one without a word. Then I called my leasing agent and signed on a larger one-bedroom. No roommates, no shared spaces, no, "Hey Mike, can we crash at your place for the weekend?" from Julian's endless string of freeloading business partners. But the real move? I booked a lunch reservation at Mom's favorite overpriced bistro. The same place she'd begged me to take her for her 58th birthday just this once because it's tradition. I messaged the family group chat. Yes, we had one, and wrote, "Let's talk. Lunch tomorrow. 1 p.m. I'll cover the bill." Almost instantly, Julian responded with a thumbs up. Mom replied, "I'm glad you're finally coming around. Bring the first deposit slip, sweetheart." That told me everything I needed to know. They still thought they had me. The next day, I showed up in a tailored suit. Not because I had to. I never wear suits outside of conferences, but because I wanted to look them in the eye as their narrative collapsed. Mom was already at the table, beaming like a queen. Julian sat beside her, flipping through what looked like printed spreadsheets. I sat down. Said nothing. "Michael," Mom started, reaching for my hand. "This is so good. I know emotions were high, but I always knew you'd come to your senses. You're just like your father. You understand family responsibility." Julian slid a document across the table. "Here's a draft of the monthly transfers," he said, casually sipping his drink. "We factored in your last 3 bonuses. It's modest. $2,800 monthly. On top of rent, groceries, utilities, it would leave me with barely enough for my own needs. And that wasn't all. There were tiers. Bonuses above $10,000? 70% to the fund. Freelance work or consulting? 60%. Modest, Julian repeated, with a grin that made me want to flip the table. I leaned back, folded my arms. "Okay," I said slowly. "But just so I understand, what exactly does the family fund do?" Mom blinked. "It supports everyone. Who's everyone? Well, she said, your brother's startup is still in development, and I'm not working right now because of my sciatica, and Uncle Ray lost his job. So, not me, I clarified. Everyone else. Michael, don't be petty. I picked up the contract and read the fine print. Julian had actually tried to word it like a binding agreement, like he was managing a trust fund. Is this a joke? I asked flatly. Julian's expression shifted. Don't start, man. You agreed. I didn't agree. You announced it. You all clapped like I was Santa Claus. You left before we could explain. I left. I cut in, because you tried to handcuff my financial future to a family full of adults who refused to take responsibility. Silence. Mom leaned in, her voice soft. Manipulative. Sweetheart, you've always been the strong one. You've always supported us. Exactly, I said. And I'm done. Her eyes went wide. Excuse me. I stood up, dropped the contract onto my untouched plate. I'm done funding Julian's failure tour. I'm done paying for your vacations disguised as emergencies. And I'm especially done pretending like love equals sacrifice. Michael, she gasped. Don't talk to your mother like. No, you don't get to guilt me anymore. You don't get to call me ungrateful when you've been draining me dry for years. Julian stood. Bro, calm down. I turned to him. You're 35. Grow up. Get a job. You're not building a legacy, Julian. You're clinging to one someone else created. His jaw clenched. You think you're better than everyone? No, I said. But I'm better than this. I pulled out a manila folder and dropped it on the table. What's that? Mom asked. Receipts, I said. Every transfer. Every gift. Every loan you said you'd pay back. Over $78,000. I did the math. Julian snorted. So you're keeping score now? I looked him dead in the eye. Yes. Because you never did. I walked away as Mom called my name. Didn't look back. That night, the messages started. Julian. You embarrass Mom. You're acting like a child. Mom. This is just a phase. You'll calm down. Call me. Then silence. Then 2 days later, panic. Julian's startup, investors aka more family connections were pulling out. Word had spread I wasn't supporting the fund anymore. And guess who they all thought was the real financial backer? Me. Without my name attached, the whole operation looked like a setup, and it finally fell apart. Because it was. Next came the calls from Uncle Ray. Then Aunt Carla. Then a voicemail from Mom that started calm and ended with tears. Michael, please. Your brother made a mistake. We just need a little help getting through the quarter. We can revisit the numbers after, okay? No, not anymore. The fallout was immediate. The moment I walked out of that lunch, it was like pulling a Jenga block from the bottom of the tower they'd built on my back. Everything began to collapse, fast and loud. I changed my number the same afternoon. No more, can you talk for a minute? Voicemails from Julian. No more, Michael, we didn't mean it that way, text from Mom. I wasn't playing cleanup anymore. I was done. For the first time in years, the silence was mine. And it was glorious. But they didn't take it well. Not even close. By the end of that week, I'd received an email from Julian titled, Urgent, please read. His company, the one I'd been silently funding for years, was falling apart. 2 investors had pulled out. Their biggest supplier bailed once they found out the lead financial backer, me, was no longer involved. Apparently, Julian had been using my name in pitches, without my knowledge. Saying things like, my brother's got us covered through Q4, and we've got 6 figures of runway thanks to family support. All lies. All based on the assumption I'd never walk away. Except I did. And the financial house of cards he built on my name collapsed in days. Mom started calling from burner numbers. I ignored them all. Then came an email with the subject line. It's not too late to fix this. Fix what? Your complete dependence on me? Your decades-long belief that I exist solely to fund your lifestyles? There was nothing to fix. There was only freedom to claim. Within 2 weeks, I'd moved into my new apartment. Bigger than I needed. Sleek. Modern. With a heavy door that locked like a vault. The kind of door no one barges through just to borrow your Wi-Fi or crash for the weekend. My salary was finally mine. I bought groceries without calculating what I had to set aside for Mom's dental work or Julian's emergency phone upgrade. I invested in new gear for my side hustle. I joined a gym. Slept. Breathed. For the first time, I saw my reflection in the mirror and didn't see exhaustion. I saw me. It was surreal. And beautiful. Then, the family really began to crack. Uncle Ray called, the man who once told me money flows upward in families, like I was some kind of fountain. He wanted to have a word about the way I handled things. I told him I'd only speak through email. He never followed up. Aunt Carla messaged me on Facebook, asking if I was okay. Said Mom was devastated and that Julian looked like a ghost. I left her on read. Cousin Jess, though, she was different. Whatever you said to them, she texted, you shook the entire family tree. I laughed. And for once, it didn't feel bitter. It felt earned. Then came the breaking point. A month after I cut them off, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Michael. It was Mom. Her voice was small, unfamiliar. I'm at your building. I just want to talk. I almost hung up. Almost. But something inside me, some small part that still remembered a time before the manipulation, said, give her 5 minutes. That was all. 5. She was waiting in the lobby, holding a Tupperware container like she was delivering a peace offering. Inside was my favorite, roast chicken and rice. Just like when I was a kid. She didn't smile. Didn't beg. Just said, can we sit? We found 2 chairs in the corner. I didn't say a word. She started slowly. I didn't realize what we were doing to you. Not really. I raised an eyebrow. Took a public meltdown and financial implosion for that? She winced. I know. I know how that sounds. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Receipts. Every transaction. Every deposit. Every transfer I'd made to cover the mortgage, Julian's failed startups, the cruise she said was a gift from a friend. $78,450 in total. Julian told me you kept records, she said. I didn't believe him. I thought, you were just being cold. I looked at the numbers. Cold? This was survival. My financial autopsy. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. I just wanted you to know I see it now. All of it. And then she said it. The one sentence I thought I'd never hear. We used you. Not relied on. Not asked for help. Used. I wanted to believe I was being a good mother, she said, but I was treating you like an income stream. And when you pushed back, I called it ungrateful. Her voice cracked. And I'm so sorry. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, letting her confession echo in my ears like a church bell. She left the folder on the chair beside me. And then she walked out. A week later, I got a text from Julian. No theatrics. Just, you were right. I'm starting over. For real this time. Then a photo, him in a work vest, holding a clipboard at a warehouse. Minimum wage job. Actual effort. I didn't respond. But I smiled. Because here's what they never understood. Cutting them off wasn't about revenge. It was about recovery. It was about reclaiming a life that had been slowly drained of color, energy, and freedom. One Venmo request at a time. Last Friday, I took myself out to dinner. A real one. Table for one. Candle. Glass of wine. I sat there in silence, scrolling through apartment listings, not because I needed to move, but because for the first time in my life, I could. My phone buzzed. A message from Jess. Proud of you. You lit the match. Let them feel the heat. And I did. I still do. They thought I'd come back. They always did. Every time I set a boundary, they pushed until it bent. Every no became a maybe. Every, this is the last time, became just one more exception. But not this time. This time, I disappeared and stayed gone. And for a while, it drove them insane. Mom texted, called, emailed, left voicemails crying about how we used to be close. Julian sent a string of guilt-laced messages, trying to manipulate me back into the role I was born into, the fixer. The bank. The fallback plan. I ignored them all. And when the silence stretched longer than they expected, they panicked. Because for once, their plan had failed. And I didn't come crawling back to fix it. The best part? My life got better. Instantly. My account balance stopped dropping for reasons that had nothing to do with me. My weekends were finally mine. I started sleeping better. Eating better. Smiling more. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was healing. I finally had room to build my life, not theirs. I picked up old hobbies. Took a real vacation. Bought myself things I used to call unnecessary luxuries because someone else's crisis always came first. I started dating again. With someone who didn't ask what I earned before asking what I loved. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt something wild and foreign. Peace. A few months in, I got a letter. From Mom. Handwritten. Tear-stained. Full of, I didn't realize, and we were just trying to survive and Julian struggling. She called it a misunderstanding. I called it a decade of financial pressure I was never allowed to question. She begged me to come home for Thanksgiving. Said the family missed me. That Nothing feels right without you. I almost laughed. Because for the first time, everything in my world felt exactly right. Julian went dark not long after. Jess told me he moved in with a friend after the startup went belly up. No more investors. No income. Just debt. She said he was finally learning what real life looks like without a safety net. Without me. Good. Let him grow with the same pressure and weight I once carried alone. Maybe then he'll understand. Maybe he'll finally get it. Maybe he won't. But it's not my job to save him anymore. The truth? They never loved me. They loved what I did for them. And the second I stopped producing, stopped sacrificing, stopped bending, they turned cold. Accused me of betrayal. Because in their world, saying no is the ultimate sin. But I'd rather be hated for walking away than loved for being a doormat. And now? Now they're living with that choice. And I'm living with mine. Last week, I sat alone in my favorite cafe, sipping the most overpriced coffee imaginable. And I smiled. Not because of the view. Not because of the quiet. But because the money I spent that day? It was mine. Earned by me. Spent on me. Not vacuumed into some never-ending family pit. Not stolen under the guise of togetherness. Just mine. And that might not sound like much to some people. But to me, that was freedom. So here's the final truth. You don't owe your family your paycheck. You don't owe them your peace. You don't owe them your entire life just because you share DNA. You owe them nothing once they start treating you like an asset instead of a person. They called me cold. They called me heartless. They said I was ungrateful. Fine. Let them. I'd rather be ungrateful than used. I'd rather be alone than drained. I'd rather be free, completely, powerfully, unapologetically free. And I am.